episode, we talked about the American Revolution. And in this episode, we're going to talk about another revolution, the French Revolution. So buckle up and let's get to the French Revolution. My name is Sean. Hope you enjoyed this video. And why don't we start by looking at some notes. The French Revolution. At the end of this video, here's a special info, so stay tuned to the end of the video. As always, let's start with the question from the lesson. Here it is. How can common people influence a government? Put your answers in the comments below or just email me at my email. Let's get started. The French Revolution started because of the American Revolution. If you remember from our last episode, the American Revolution, I'll put the link in the description below. If you remembered from that video, you might know that the French Revolution was inspired by the American Revolution. And here's how. After the American Revolution was won by the Americans, allied with the French forces, the French ended up with a big debt. You know, money is needed to get weapons and those manufacturing, of course. Kind of like the English debt. Was large, and this changed the French into bankruptcy. Kind of like the English, though. I have to say for myself. So they decide the king of France, the current king is King Louis the 16th. King Louis the 16th. Decided to make taxes for the French people. And he did that with the help of his government. The French people, the commoners, got so angry, and also they got so poor. They were so poor, in fact, that they couldn't even buy bread or milk or anything else. Except just a few crumbs. That's not enough food. One day, the French said that they would not pay the taxes again. The King Louis XVI wanted to solve this problem, so he made a meeting called the Meeting in Versailles. This consisted of nobles, like the clergy of the Catholic Church, and you might be surprised to learn the commoners. I'm both surprised. But here's an unsurprising thing. King Louis XVI didn't want the commoners to vote while the voting part of this meeting. So when it was time to vote, he locked them out of the voting. No, not into jail, but just outside into the French world. The commoners got more angry. Second time I said angry. And they decided to make a new government, and they called it the National Assembly. Literally. They also made a new set of laws called the Constitution. The Constitution was sent to King Louis XVI himself. Of course, he refused it because it said that all French commoners, all French citizens, no matter if it is a noble, a clergy, or even a common or peasant or a merchant, should have protected rights from the king. In this case, King Louis XVI. I have to agree with that. If you are a king from another country, I'm sorry to say that. As I said earlier, King Louis XVI, of course, didn't allow that. This made the commoners and the National Assembly even more angry. Just to show how angry they are, they attacked a royal prison called the Bastille. Yeah. And it was full of weapons. They even used it as a siege place. Also, also a weaponry place and at the same time, because King Louis XVI kept on attacking it to regain it again. Also, I guess it was a bit luxurious. Women also want revenge on nobles and the clergy because of their slavery, probably because of their husbands. They stole weapons from the Bastille and they went to kill a lot of nobles and clergy. Speaking of killing nobles and clergy, peasants started grabbing their farming tools and breaking into nobles or clergy's houses and killing them. I mean, it was common in those days, so it was common. When the other countries, Great Britain, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Ottoman Empire, Austrian Empire, the Prussians, Russia, saw that the French Revolution, they saw that the revolution could spread into their places. So they decided to stop that. The French heard this idea and said, why don't we attack them first? And then what the myth said became true. That's for another video though. Finally, after years of that tolerating and stuff, King Louis XVI decided to share his power and allow the Constitution. So now that the revolution is over, we can get over, right? No, it's not even over yet. There was this executing machine called the guillotine. Guillotine. If you have ever saw your mother chop or cut some food, you might see her as cutting it like this. Well, the guillotine does that kind of thing in the same way. I'll explain. So here's the guillotine machine. The head goes here, there's a hole right here, and this is where it's supposed to go. The head right here, here's a knife. Someone pulls this lever, the knife goes down, the man sitting right here gets his head chopped off. And people just cheer. If it's enemy. Well, this happened to King Louis XVI himself. King Louis XVI asked help in 1792 to the other monarchs to stop the revolution, so they agreed. Before that message was sent to the other countries, the commoners and the nobles found out this idea. The nobles supported this idea, but the commoners, there are too much of them, there's 98% of the population, wanted him dead, and they also called him a traitor. If you remember from our previous episode, you might know what a traitor is. So they sent him to the guillotine, and then after he died, his head was held up in front of the crowd. His head was, and the crowd just cheered, kept on cheering. I'm not even kidding, guys. This happened to his wife, Marie Antoinette, an Austrian. He tried to flee from his country, and that's also another reason why he's called a traitor. If you're wondering what it spelled like, well, here's what it spelled like. Marie Antoinette. If you can read downwards. Marie Antoinette faced the same fate the next year in 1793. She's still in a prison cell, and she was brought to the guillotine in a peasant cart. Then she was chopped off, and also her head was held up and cheered. She didn't like it. After that, the National Assembly divided into three factions. If you remember from our episode of the Isun-shin and the Japanese invasion, you might know the West and East faction. Well, the National Assembly split it into three factions, and each faction, like the West and East faction, disagreed and argued all the time. Something like the West and East faction would do. This brought chaos, and more people were sent to the guillotine. Over 40,000 million people got killed because of the guillotine. This chaos was ended by a man called Napoleon Bonaparte. I'll just write that name. Napoleon Bonaparte became the dictator of France and he ended it. We're going to talk about him in our next unit. Oh, and that war is going to be called the Napoleonic Wars. If you're still wondering what this liberty, equality, and fraternity means, well, that was the motto and the ideal, the common ideal during the French Revolution. Liberty is freedom for everyone, no matter if it's a high class or a low class. I'm sorry, even though if you're a parent or a child. Sorry if you are a parent, guys. Equality, well, you might know as equal rights. No peasants here. And fraternity, what's fraternity? Well, it's brotherhood. Everybody should do the same things and the same rights. And no kind of killing stuff. So, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Shunhan out. Robot dancing, ding, ding, ding. Writing as usual is going to be about what did you learn about the French Revolution and how can common people influence a government. Put your answers in the comments below or just email me on my email. Let's get started. What did you learn about the French Revolution? Well, I learned that the French Revolution is a revolution that started because of the American Revolution, the war that was won by the Americans versus British. After the American Revolution, the French had a king called King Louis XVI. He's the one who helped the Americans win their war. King Louis XVI was hated by the commoner during the French Revolution, and he was killed by a machine called the guillotine, and people cheered. His wife got the same execution next year. And all of this chaos happened because of the National Assembly splitting into three factions. If you remember from our episode on this Yi Sun-shin episode, you might know what that is. After the National Assembly split into the three factions, there was chaos, and Napoleon Bonaparte ended the chaos, and he became dictator. In his dream, he actually thought of him as Emperor! I'm not even kidding, guys. Alright, next question. Oh, it just fell off. How can common people influence a government? Common people can influence a government by doing a lot of the stuff that happened in the French Revolution. Like, just protesting for new governments, and sometimes even the kings or a president, or whatever the leader of your country is, can even influence the common people to their government. Also making laws, and they also made their own government, the National Assembly. So those are some ways how common people can influence a government. And that's it for our writing for the day. Alright, today's extra history is going to be about the life of King Louis XVI, the great-grandson of King Louis XIV. So, let's learn something today. King Louis XVI was a guy, and we don't know much about his early life though, but we do know his life during the French Revolution. So let's get started on that. King Louis XVI, I have to say, if you were acting like King Louis XVI, you might have a bad life. Also, just for his protection, he had to agree on the revolutionaries, and he also told them that he's their #1 fan. And he was told to go do a lot of stuff, and he got a lot of order after order after order. Well, if you ever experienced that, you know how it feels. King Louis XVI wanted this order to stop, and well, he King Louis XVI and his wife, Marie Antoinette, dressed themselves as servants, got into the royal carriage, and tried to go all the way to the boundary of France. They stopped at a place before the boundary even came. And the clerk there just said, "Hey, hi guys, where are you going?" And then just King Louis XVI might have said that, "We're just inconspicuous servants who are heading for the border for no particular reason." And then, well, here's one surprising thing. The clerk there recognized King Louis XVI, and he said, "You, the fat one, you look kind of familiar. Aren't you the king?" "No, not me." And then he just saw his passport and just said it was King Louis XVI. And then King Louis XVI and his wife, Marie Antoinette, was sent back to the Versailles, which is in Paris. King Louis XVI kept on. King Louis XVI's unsupport of the revolution was clear to everyone, and even after he died, his unliking was still unlikely. Let me talk about it. King Louis XVI was almost sentenced to death because of a kind of revolution guy. And after that, after the National Assembly was made, a new government was also made, and then the National Assembly was disabled into another name. Well, this is kind of complicated, so I won't go through it all. King Louis XVI gradually just changed back to plain old Louis. There's no king, not the 16th, although there is a 16th. After Louis became just plain old Louis, he was just a king, but a mere figurehead, like the emperor of our feudalism in Japan. I'll put that video in the link in the description. After Louis XVI became a figurehead, the people wanted his punishment. One of King Louis XVI's punishment was to go out to the other countries. But a guy, probably a guy named Max, said that King Louis XVI might end the revolution after he's out in some other country. And he said that the revolution would only go on if Louis was dead. That was a very common idea back then. King Louis XVI tried to escape the palace and all of France, and then tried to reconquer it. And then he was called a traitor when his plans were discovered. And here's a surprising thing. 360 people voted for him to go away into other countries. And do you know what the vote for him to die was? Guess in the comments below. Enter in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. 361. Just one vote. And King Louis XVI was sentenced to death. And if you just remember from our guillotine part of the video, you might know that he was sentenced to death by the guillotine and his head was held up. Oh. And also, why couldn't he have any eyes? Better. Alright. King Louis XVI's head was held up high into the after he was executed, and it was said that he might have just said a few words, but then he was executed. Marie Antoinette, his wife, just ended up the same way. And well, here's a myth I have to tell you. She said a famous saying that said that, "Let the peasants, commoners, and nobles eat bread and cookies." And then she was executed. Well, archaeologists and historians prove this wrong because of historical and archaeological evidence. I'm not even surprised about that discovery because I never knew about that cookie and turkey saying. It's just a myth, guys. After King Louis XVI died, the monarchy ended. No more monarchs would be in France, and then right then, France became a democracy. Kind of like the United States of America. Well, see you next time then. Shanhan out. me. It was sponsored by me. This writing and this number and drawing of this flag was drawn and written by me. The drawing of these maps for talking about flags is drawn by me. This note that I drew and colored and written is written, drawn, and colored by me. Even this. Even the measurement was done by me. And also with my YouTube channel, Hanshin, and also these videos that I produce, I will be able to make my videos and this channel for the rest of my life. Oh, and also, special announcement. I'm thinking of starting a Patreon page, and speaking of Patreons, and also, I'm thinking of starting a new channel. When I get back to my channel, I'm just gonna get my friends into together and make up videos for that channel. If I do ever make that channel. Oh, and please subscribe to this channel. Hit the like button and hit the bell button to all or notifications so you wouldn't miss any of my videos. And if I do ask a question, please answer them in the comments below or just email me at my email. 20JUR at neighbor.com. And speaking of questions, today's question is, what is the name of the new government that the commoners made? Is it A, the National Assembly, B, the National Convention, or C, the national government? See you then. Shenhan out.